Welcome to Elemental Fun, a historical and cultural look of the elements of the periodic table.
Hello and welcome to Elemental Fun. My name is Grace.
My name is Cindy, and any small baby noises you hear would be my baby Cordelia.
Hi, Cordelia. It's so great being able to see her through a screen, but
video screen because, pandemic and stuff.
Yes, we are still in the pandemic. It has been a long time since we recorded. We recorded in late March. That was the last time we recorded.
We've been a little busy with teaching second graders, right?
Yes.
Online.
Crisis teaching, as we call it.
Crisis teaching. Yes. And then me having a baby, and then continuing to have the baby in the house.
Yes.
With a 7-year-old who then I was helping finish his first grade. Online.
Yes, that's how I feel about it too, Cordelia.
That's how we all feel about it. And we're all getting ready for online in the fall. So
yes, but it'll be different. It will not be crisis teaching.
Right. It'll be planned.
We will actually have a plan.
As much as we can plan.
Well, no, teachers are going to be pretty...
Oh, no, them. I'm just saying, like, that's going to be all planned, but then how it all pans out will be...
Yes.
Whatever happens.
Yeah. Flexibility is key.
Exactly.
Everyone's always like, we need a lot of grace. And I'm like, I'm in high demand these days. But
it's true.
So today, moving on.
We got into the actual podcast.
Yes, we are going to talk about 3 elements today. And those 3 elements are connected by Madame Marie Curie. So we are going to talk about radium, polonium, and curium. Curium is not was not discovered by the Curies, but was named after them. And since there's probably not that much to say about it, we just threw it in with this one in hopes that we could be like, and check that one off the list. It is connected though.
Yes.
So I am going to go through Marie Curie's life a little bit, and we'll talk. And Cindy's going to talk more about the elements, and I'll tell some fun facts about Marie Curie later on. But we'll just go through it that way. So Marie Curie, wife, mother, an all-around badass scientist.
Oh, yeah. And, this is in the 1800s. So, like an early 1900s, like pretty awesome lady to be a big deal back then.
And we'll talk about how the fact that her husband pretty much was like right there with her for most of the work and discoveries.
Oh, yes.
But she is remembered simply because women were not allowed to do this at this time. Mm-hmm. And she broke a lot of barriers in her time. And it's not just about the discoveries of the elements that she discovered. It's about how she was able to overcome a lot of things. And she was the first to do quite a few things. So
yeah, it is kind of funny though, because I feel kind of bad when I was looking up the elements, and it was like Marie and Pierre Curie, and I'm like, oh, I never hear about this guy. It's like a reverse thing. Usually you never hear about the woman that did stuff. Right. And now it's like, oh, I feel kind of bad for her husband, even though super awesome.
You will feel even worse as we go on. So
awesome. So let's learn.
Marie Curie was born Maria Sklodowska.
Whoa,
Sklodowska. She in Warsaw, Poland on November 7th, 1867. She was the daughter of a secondary school teacher.
Ooh.
Now, this was important because she received a general education at a local school, but some of her scientific training came from her dad, which most girls wouldn't have gotten, just, with like their dad not being a teacher.
Right.
Well, she became involved in a students' revolutionary organization, so she had to leave Warsaw.
Oh.
Because the part of, back then, Warsaw was dominated by Russia, but the other part of Poland, Krakow, was Austrian rule. And so because of her connection with the revolutionists, she had to leave.
Yeah.
And get out of there. Then
They
she
don't really
went to,
like revolution, generally. Governments. Thanks.
yeah, and Russia
Yeah.
in general doesn't like when people revolt.
Rebel. Yeah.
Yeah. She went to Paris in 1891 to continue her studies, where she obtained a licentiateship in physics and mathematics studies, which is basically a license to practice science.
Oh, okay. I was like, what? A licenseship? Interesting.
Yeah, it's a licentiateship in physics and mathematics science. Basically, like I am qualified to practice this.
Like a certification, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certified to be able to do this.
Yeah, or in that profession,
right?
Kind of thing. In 1894, she met Pierre Curie, and they were married within a year. He was a professor at the School of Physics.
And this is all in France?
Yes.
Okay. Oui.
Oui. And in that time, they had two daughters. They had Eve Curie and I think Irene Curie. In 1898, together,
Irene Joliot Curie.
Yes. In 1898, together, they took the work of French scientist Henri, Becquerel. He basically found out that uranium salts give off a strong radiation, and they took that and they took it a step further. And in 1897, they found out how to take precise radiation measurements. She is responsible for coining the term radioactivity.
She is?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. In 1898, they isolated the radioactive element polonium and radium.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to pump the brakes so that Cindy can talk a little bit about radium, or you could talk about one and then I could chat more and then you can talk about the other.
So I'm going to start off with talking about the radioactivity because there's different types of radioactivity.
This gets kind of confusing. So
it does a little bit.
So break it down.
The way that they discuss basically the characteristics of the radiation is ionizing power and penetration power. So ionizing power is basically how much the ability of the radiation to damage molecules. So how able is it to mess things up, basically, these molecules, which would include like your DNA and other things in your body, right? The penetration power is the ability of the radiation to pass through matter. So one is how much damage it does. The other one is how far it can go through stuff.
Okay.
So both are important because if you have a high ionizing, so you're highly can damage molecules, and you have high penetration power, there's not much you can do to stop it.
Right.
So it'd be bad if those were both together. But luckily, you get one or the other. So alpha radiation which is basically the nucleus of a helium atom, has 2 protons and 2 neutrons, is what gets released as the radioactivity, as the element decays and it sheds this radiation.
Wait, isn't there a helium shortage? Should we just
but it's just a helium nucleus because it's not a helium atom, because you have to have the 2 electrons with those 2 protons to be a helium actual atom.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
So it's just the helium nucleus that they're putting, and that's what they call an alpha particle. So that one has low penetration, but very high ionizing power. So it can do a lot of damage, but the only shielding you need is either paper or skin.
Oh.
So with an alpha, radiation, it doesn't even go through your skin. That's what your epidermis is so great. It stops things like this. Then there's beta radiation, which is actually high energy electrons that are being spewed off, basically.
Okay.
And that has both intermediate penetration and intermediate ionizing power. To shield it, you need something like aluminum, so like a metal.
Okay.
And then there's gamma radiation, which is energy, just energy being given off. And this penetration is very high, but it's ionizing. The damage it can do is very low. So it can get through a lot of stuff, but it's not going to do as much damage as your alpha radiation would. And this is the one, if you want to protect yourself, you have to have 2 inches of lead.
Ooh.
Yeah, to protect you from gamma.
And lead's not that great.
Yeah, you don't want to be around lead either. Ew. About that. Lesser of two evils. So why we kind of bring that up is that both radium and polonium give off alpha radiation.
So
high damage.
High damage, but easily protected.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's good. And then radium also, I read it gives off beta and gamma, but they didn't really go too much into the rest of radium. But we'll start off with polonium because it's a fun word to say.
It is.
Do you know why it was named polonium?
After her home country of Poland.
Poland. So that was a nice homage to her.
And actually, they knew they were gonna, whatever element they were gonna discover, they already knew they were gonna name it polonium. They had decided on it ahead of time, even before they were able to, because it took a long time to separate it.
It took months.
Yeah, it took a long time and a lot of work in their little hut.
In their little thing. It's true. So they, it's a silvery gray, obviously radioactive semi-metal. In 1898, Marie and her husband isolated it from what's called pitch blende, which is an ore made with a lot of uranium oxide. So uranium, your radioactive uranium. And they were searching for the source of the radioactivity because they knew that it did that, but it wasn't just the uranium. They found that unrefined pitch blende was more radioactive than the uranium that they separated it from. So they knew there's something else because it's not the uranium that's giving off this high amounts of radioactivity. So it took months of work because in 1 ton of uranium, there is 0.0001 gram of polonium. So this is minuscule amount that they were able to finally isolate. And that polonium was the isotope polonium-209, because quick thing, isotopes are the same element, just different number of neutrons, so it has different weight. So this isotope has a half-life, which means it takes, the half-life is how long it takes to decrease by half as it decays, of 103 years. And it is 400 more times more radioactive than uranium. Just crazy. Because you think uranium, that's where that's what we use for nuclear stuff. It's uranium. Like, that's really radioactive. No.
Well, and the way they like, the techniques they were using to separate, like, I was reading an article and it was even saying how they used bags with pine needles and they were just trying to wear down things, and it just was a very almost basic, not the new term basic, but the old term basic, the original definition.
Yeah, I mean, this is the late 1800s. They're not in early 1900s. They don't have really great
I'm sitting
technology.
there going, how did they go? This gives off more radiation. I'm like, if I ran into something that was radioactive, I'd be like, whoa, what?
What's going on? Well, it said at least this one, your skin stops it, so it's better. So it's not quite so damaging. But prior to that, the only elements that they knew were radioactive were uranium and thorium. So this was a huge discovery, that there's more things that are radioactive.
We should do uranium and thorium in the same one.
We should. Yes, because there's some cool stuff about thorium, about nuclear reactors, and I know that from my husband. But it could be safer than what we use. So those will be good ones to do together.
Yeah.
And so the existence of polonium was forecast by Mendeleev because he was looking at his periodic table and he's like, I think there's something that comes after bismuth. There's something there, but I don't know what it is. So only
because it was only a few years before that he had kind of created the periodic table.
Right, and they had like spaces for
And there were spaces where
don't
things
know, but there
weren't
should be something
invented.
here. Yeah.
So
Which is just
a recap, Cindy, recap the periodic table and how they would know there were gaps in those squares. Can you?
Oh, because the periodic table, they basically laid it out by weight. and or the how much the
Isn't it how many?
It's how many let me pull it up just to get my bearings.
Come on, Cindy.
It's basically done by weight, which is the number of protons and neutrons in it, but it's the numbers that go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 are the number of protons in the atom, because that's the, as I like to call, the identity. If you change the number of protons, you change the atom, the element that it is.
Yeah.
So they basically laid it out like that. And so when they knew, like, oh, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we have this other one that's 8. Well, there's probably something that's there's 5, 6, and 7 in the middle. So they, based on either the atomic number, which is the number of protons, or the weight, they knew that there were spaces that they were missing in the periodic table that they would eventually find.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure for anyone that was like, how did they know there were gaps? I don't understand. Because it's by weight.
Other podcasts.
Like if you, wow. Well, because like, so the number one, hydrogen, right? Hydrogen's not number one because it's the coolest.
Nope, it's because it's got one proton.
Because it's got one proton. And that's why the bottom of the thing are all these obscure ones, because they're basically ones we've created in labs.
Right.
Because they don't exist. And we basically force protons into an atom to make a new element. We're like, it's there, that it disappears.
Which we'll talk about when we talk about the curium.
Yes. So, do you want to wait to talk about radium?
Well, I still got more about polonium.
Oh, well, by all means, you just go for it. You go.
So, it's in biology. There's no role in biology because you don't want it in your body because it's highly toxic because it's radioactive.
Right.
Your skin will stop it, but if you happen to ingest it for some reason, which I don't recommend, about 50 to 90% of it will leave through your poop.
Oh, right.
Well, actually,
I found proof that it actually is found naturally in the human body because it's present in our food chain.
Oh, yes. So, there is, and let me get to that. Yeah. If it is getting in your body, it will be deposited in the kidneys and the liver and the spleen. And it has a half-life of like 50 days. So it's not going to be in there long term. But, and so it is very rare, found in uranium ore in nature. But there is traces in the air and the soil. And uranium decays into radium, which decays into radon gas, which decays into polonium. So that's where it's found in the air. And in the soil, there's lichens that can, there's things called lichens, which are a combination of fungus and algae together, and they absorb it from the air. And so in northern areas, people who eat reindeer, and the reindeer happen to eat lichens, can have higher polonium concentrations in their blood than other people. Because they eat reindeer that eat lichens that absorb polonium.
Again, the food chain.
Exactly. And there was a 2011 study that tobacco companies know that cigarettes and other tobacco products contain low levels of polonium. And they say that up to 138 deaths for every 1,000 smokers over 25 years are due to polonium. And another study shows that there are 2 times the amount of polonium in the ribs of smokers than in non-smokers.
Wow.
So, like, the scary thing there really isn't the fact that it kills people. It's that the tobacco companies know it's there and don't care.
Nope. I have 2 fun facts about polonium. One is that it was a large component of the atomic bomb that destroyed Nagasaki.
Yes. So because of that, for its uses is as an alpha source, as those alpha particles. So as a thin film or stainless steel disc for anti-static devices, because it neutralizes the electric charge, because the electrons go out and it has protons, so it neutralizes them. So things like in computers, sometimes it'll be there. dust from photographic film, and the source of thermoelectric power for space satellites. Um, but they can be mixed or alloyed with beryllium to provide a source of neutrons, and that's what it is for the nuclear weapons. So they take beryllium and polonium, and that is, they keep it separated until activation, and once they put them together, it's what they call the trigger for the bomb, because it releases those neutrons.
Wow.
So that was why the first atomic bomb was important.
And I doubt, Marie Curie was like, wow, good use of my discovery, guys.
Right.
Great. The other random fact I have about polonium was that in 2006, a former member of the Russian Secret Service, Alexander Litvinenko,
a Russian spy in London.
Yes, he was murdered in London when his tea was poisoned with polonium.
And do you know that in 2004, it is thought that the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat was suspected that he was killed by polonium because there was high levels of polonium on his clothes.
That's so crazy.
So there's been a couple high-profile deaths that have been linked to polonium. Another interesting fact is that, so I mentioned for thermoelectric power for space satellites, so thermo is heat. They use it for a source of heat because 1 gram will reach 500 degrees centigrade due to the alpha radiation emitted. So it's good for space equipment to keep it warm.
Wow.
And 1 gram is the weight of a dollar bill. Not a lot. Will reach 500 degrees Celsius. Remembering that 100 degrees Celsius is boiling water. So 5 times that heat is what it reaches. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So
about as hot as me.
That's right. I think that's it for polonium. I think I have everything that I was going to talk about with them. Oh, no, one last thing.
Okay.
They think that the first person, possibly, that died from polonium poisoning was Marie Curie's daughter, Irene.
Did she die? Did Marie die of she died of
leukemia, but a polonium capsule exploded on her lab bench, which may have been why she got leukemia and died 10 years later. Because radioactivity can damage your DNA. Damage to your DNA can cause cancer.
I read that. Wait, are you talking about her daughter or Marie?
No, her daughter, Irene.
Okay, because Marie, her.
Well, don't they think that she died from long-term poisoning?
Yes.
Yeah.
They said it was anemia, but basically she was
exposed. You can't see Grace, but she's doing the air quotes. Or
right.
Or as my son likes to call them, air quivers.
Air quivers.
Because he couldn't remember what quotes was, so he's like, I'm doing the air quivers. I'm like, okay. I've heard inklings that she died from long-term exposure. She was basically working with all these radioactivity things her entire life. So
yeah, no, there's I think they considering that no one can go into her lab.
Oh yeah, no, you can't use your notebook because it's still radioactive.
Yeah, and yeah. So we'll get into that. So in 1903, she was, I think, the first woman to receive a Nobel Prize, but she had to share it with her husband and with Becquerel, the guy with the uranium salt, in 1903. And actually, when they initially put in the paperwork, they did not include her name in it. And I believe it was her husband that was like, no, she helped a lot. So put her name on that paper.
About that.
And she also succeeded her husband as the head of the physics laboratory. I sound like Dexter's laboratory. At Sorbonne, which was her alma mater, and she gained her doctorate in science in 1903.
Ooh,
she was a doctor. But tragedy hits in 1906. Pierre Curie died tragically at the age of 46 when he was crushed under the wheels and hooves of a passing horse-drawn carriage.
What?
Yep.
He was run over?
Basically.
Why? That seems like something. It's not like the horses were going 90 miles an hour. Like, I mean, they could be going pretty fast, but you'd think you'd be able to jump out of the way.
I'm guessing he fell into the street. That would be my guess.
Yeah. Maybe he was pushed. Dun, dun,
He
dun.
might have been pushed.
Or maybe he was drunk.
I don't know.
Crazy.
Yeah. So then she was.
Oh, wait. So what year was that?
It was in 1906.
Oh, 1906. Okay, because Arlene died.
They'd already gotten their Nobel Prize.
Right.
And that first Nobel Prize was in physics.
Oh,
was then no.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So
because we're talking about chemistry here, Grace.
I know, but they gave it to him in physics.
Okay.
So she wasn't included in the paperwork in 1903, but when they won it, the awards were like blown up by the quote media end quote of the time, because the idea of a married like a couple working together and like it created this whole romanticism. And of course, no one even cared about the Nobel Prizes back then.
Right.
Like they weren't a big deal. But then, like all of a sudden, there's a woman and they're in love and they're discovering new elements, and like the romanticism of it kind of just made it go crazy. And then after radium was discovered, they started using Curie's name on all sorts of products for radium, like Curie's hair products that would have like.
Oh, right, because women, as any advertisement, women sell things better than men, and and radium. They used to think that it had curative properties until they discovered all the radioactivity, and they put it in toothpaste and hair creams and food stuff.
Baby clothes. They put radium in baby clothes.
Because how did the human race get to where we are now?
I don't know.
How did we not kill ourselves?
Well, we're trying real hard.
It's true.
Also, so in 1906, she was the first woman professor at Sorbonne when her husband tragically got crushed. And it was in 1911 that she was awarded the second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, for radium and polonium and isolating radium. She became the first person to receive 2 Nobel Prizes.
The first person?
First person.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a pretty big deal to win 1 Nobel Prize. Most people just get 1. Most people don't get any. There's few people that
correction. Most people don't even know what it is. And then a small fraction that know what it is won't get 1. And then even a smaller fraction of that might be nominated for 1. And then
maybe.
Yeah, right. Tiny percentage. So, and then in 1914, they completed the construction of the Radium Institute. It was a radioactivity lab built for her by the Pasteur Institute and the University of Paris. And that is actually the building that has all her radioactive materials today. It is surrounded by a concrete wall with barbed wire on the top, and like no one's allowed inside unless they're wearing protective gear. So they have their lab and
they built everything around it and then sealed off her lab. So
basically, and actually they consider this. Let me find that note. Her lab is dubbed the Chernobyl on the Seine. Her lab is still radioactive, and they barred people from entering because there's so much radioactivity. It's not close enough that people like on the sidewalk, like you said, the alpha particles, like it can't affect.
Yeah, them. I can't go through the walls and stuff. But if you go and touch the stuff, it's a different story.
But unfortunately, some thieves decided to break in the early 2000s to try to get the copper out of the
dumbest guys
ever. But then the police went in after them without gear on, and we're just like, I'm just sitting there, go like. And so, like, Paris is kind of going, okay, what do we do with this highly radioactive spot? And people aren't respecting the fact that don't go in there, you will die. But
right, and then the thing is, this is there's alpha, but remember I said earlier too that I think it gives off alpha, beta, and gamma, which is so that is more deadly than polonium.
Oh yeah, and it's gonna be for a long time.
Oh yeah, you know why? Because radium has the longest half-life The longest half-life isotope of radium is 1,602 years.
That's right. I remember.
So that's just, if we go from 10 grams to 5 grams is 1,602. Then to go from 5 grams to 2.5 grams is another 1,602 years. So it'll be a while before it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was her institute. In 1914 to 1919, she ran the radiology services and introduces radon therapy into France to help with cancer.
And do you know why it's helpful with cancer? There's specific types of cancer.
No, tell me about it.
It is used to treat prostate cancer that has spread to the bones. Because calcium and radium are in the same column, so they have the same properties. So they can target the cancer bone cells, and then the alpha particles that it emits kills those cells. And so the reason why it does that is because they're so similar, calcium and radium, it gravitates to where the newborn bone is forming because it's very similar to calcium. And the radium settles into that cancerous tissue. And then because the alpha particles go out, but they don't go out very far, remember, because it has low penetration, it basically just kills the cancerous tissue and doesn't kill as much of everything else. It would be different if you put like beta radiation or gamma radiation into your bone, like you'd be screwed.
It just shoot out the other side of your bone.
Right. You're like, and I killed everything in my path. Hello. So this one, so it just does that. And so they're testing to see if this can be done for breast cancer patients where they have developed bone that is metastasized to the bone. So it has to be something that's metastasized basically to your bones. Yeah, because that's what it helps with. Right. But it's interesting that we use. I always find it interesting that we use radiation to kill cancer cells when cancer has been caused oftentimes by radiation. But then you can use it to kill it. So it's interesting.
It's a circle of life, Cindy.
That's true.
On July 4th, 1934, she dies at the age of 66 of aplastic anemia, which they basically think she was exposed to way too much radiation over a long period of time, even low dosages.
Really?
Yeah, because in 1995, she was reburied in the Pantheon, which is France's national mausoleum, becoming the first woman awarded the honor on her own merit.
Oh.
So, like, women that were, like, royalty, that was not their own merit.
They were born into it. Yeah. Didn't do anything for it.
But she was on her own merit. She was the first woman to be awarded that honor.
Cool. If you breathe or swallow it, the effects can include cancer, anemia, cataracts, and death.
Yeah.
Like
side effects include death. So let's talk about radium for a little bit, and then I will tell you some fun facts about how much of an icon she is.
Okay. We've gone over some of the stuff that I had. Again, it was discovered with polonium by the Curies. There's 1 milligram from 10 tons of pitch blende. So they had to go through 10 tons of material to get 1 little milligram. And so that's 1/1000th of a gram. So just saying, that's small. And the reason why they knew that it was in there when we were talking about it before is that they were looking at the atomic spectrum that gets released, or the light. Basically, the samples glowed with a faint blue light, and so they knew that it was a different thing than uranium and whatever other radioactivity things that they had in there. So they used to use it, as we already said, in toothpaste, hair creams, foodstuffs until they realized that it was deadly. And it actually also used to be used on luminous paint, like for clocks and watches.
Yes, many women factory workers actually died from radiation poisoning from 1917 to 1920 because they were painting watch and clock faces with the luminous radium without realizing its danger.
Yep. And so it's funny is that it wasn't the fact that it was hurting people who wore it, because the glass and the metal would actually stop it because of the alpha particles. But it was the people who were painting it and sitting there either getting it on their skin or inhaling fumes or things like that were actually dying from it.
Yes. They stopped using it as a cancer cure in 1976, though.
Well, I think they still do, because there's the thing that I read that there was still testing that is being done for the bone cancer part.
Yeah.
I don't know about
Well,
other.
they might have taken a break. I think they're just shooting everyone with it because radium. You will find that there was in 1912. There's a Radium Palace hotel that promised treatment from radium spas because radium. There's springs that give off radium.
Right.
And that was
It's
thought to
naturally
have
occurring in small amounts, and we're constantly exposed to small amounts of it. But yeah.
And so people thought, like you said, they were putting it in soaps and toothpaste and water and baby clothes, thinking that it was a
Right.
natural cure.
It came from nature, so therefore it's good for you.
Just like arsenic.
And opium.
But there's actually, like, in the United States alone, there were 7 states boasted settlements called radium, and to this day there's still 3 radium springs, one in Georgia, one in New Mexico, and one in Wyoming.
Do you know where in New Mexico? I used to live in New Mexico. Interesting. Don't go there. To the radium springs. Go to New Mexico, it's beautiful, but not to the.
I have only put my foot in a corner of New Mexico.
Oh, have you been to Four Corners?
I did. I broke in when it was closed.
Oh, rebel. I lived in New Mexico for many, many years, and I've still never been to the Four Corners.
Okay, so we were on a road trip with my dad, and we went to go there, and we drove there, and it was like closed for the day. It was like dusk, but it was closed for the day, and we were like and there was like just okay. When I say we broke in, I mean we walked around the gate that was across the road, and we walked up the road.
Good thing they have a gate that you can walk around.
Well, yeah, I mean I don't know, but we walked around it, and we went, and then I got to be in 4 places at once.
Very cool.
Yeah, but that's the closest I've been to anywhere in New Mexico.
I used to live in Albuquerque. My parents still do.
You go and visit there quite often, except not during a global
except not during the pandemic.
Right.
Things like that.
Details.
What was I going to say? Oh, what's interesting is that they extract radium today in the same manner that the Curies did it. We haven't gotten any better at it.
All right.
Sweet. It is present in all uranium ores and can be extracted as a byproduct of uranium refining. There are rich stores in the DR Congo and Canada. But today, it's mainly extracted from from spent fuel rods from nuclear reactors. Yeah, actually, annual production is under 100 grams per year. And there was, I thought that I was going to talk about, what's interesting, polonium. Back to polonium for a second. All commercially produced polonium is from Russia.
Yes, I read that too.
That was very interesting, that we're using, the only reason we have the nuclear bomb because of the stuff we got from Russia. Okay.
I think it was radium. The United States gave Marie Curie a gram of radium as a gift, and it was worth like $1 million.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's not much. Like, annual production is under 100 grams per year. So get a stack of $1, $100. That weight is how much is produced.
Yeah, I think they gave her like a gram, and they're like, "Here you go." She was like, "Sweet, awesome! I don't have to get it out of the pitch blend myself."
Yeah, the 10 tons to get 1/1000th of a gram.
So much. Oh my gosh.
The last couple of things is that radium actually decays several times and then it turns into lead. Again, the thing's not great.
But isn't it lead that keeps out the
gamma radiation? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of weird. Full circle. Yeah, I think radioactivity is just weird because it's like it does this and it gives off something and becomes a new element. It's just like
it's like evolution in the chemistry world.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
There is a measurement called the Curie.
Ooh.
Which it's abbreviated CI, and it is equal to the amount of radiation emitted of a quantity of radionuclides that is equal to 1 gram of radium. So basically, however much radiation 1 gram of radium gives off is
a Curie.
Curie, yeah. So they measure radiation. There's a couple of different ways that they measure radiation, and one of them is the Curie. So it's kind of cool that they named it after her.
Woo-hoo. After probably both of them, but
you know,
she just gets all the credit because he died early.
Right, Pierre.
Tragically.
Those darn horses in the stagecoach. I think that's it. That's all I got for radium.
Okay.
The last thing we have is curium. You're going to chat a bit about some other cool stuff about her, though, first.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Basically, she's an icon in Poland and in France. Poland and France declared in 2011 was the year of Marie Curie.
Oh.
Not Pierre. Sorry, he gets nothing. Google celebrated
What'd you get for dying early?
Her 100-year anniversary birthday with a doodle. Google did a doodle.
I like those.
So 1 element and 3 radioactive minerals are named after her. Don't ask me to name the minerals because no one knows or cares.
We named some rocks after you. Congratulations.
She has a metro station in Paris named after her.
Mm-hmm.
Polish research reactor, 7,000 Curie asteroids, and Dutch Airlines has an airplane also named after her.
Oh, is it like the actual the type of airplane it is named after?
Yeah, the type of airplane, KLM.
Interesting.
I actually had to look it up because they're like, there's a KLM bridal or oh, there's also a bridge in Warsaw named after her.
Huh.
So lots of things named after her. Also, she's mentioned in 2 different plays. There's her likeness in 2 different plays. One is called False Assumptions, and the other one's called Manya: The Living History of Marie Curie. And her likeness has been on banknotes, stamps, and coins. So she is pretty popular. She's also on the new show Xavier Riddle and the Secret Museum. They have a whole thing on her.
Ooh,
it's a really fun one. Greta really likes it. Basically, they have a problem and then they go into the Secret Museum, which is like a secret entryway in the museum, and they go back in time and they meet a famous person when they were kids and what problem they had. And then with that problem, then they kind of transport later in their lives and get to see how they did it. And Marie Curie is like, it's basically her just trying again and again and again and having
10 tons of pitch blend in her.
Yes. And then she finally gets that thing. But and then their whole thing is like, people change the world were once kids like you and me. It's a cute.
Right. That's cute.
Idea. Yeah. And so she was on that.
It's almost like the Sherman and Peabody, where they go back in time and they meet different people, but that's as kids instead of it being as like just learning about them as adults.
Yeah, they meet them first as kids, and then they meet them again later when they're older.
Right.
And they do a lot of different people. It's really kind of
it's cool.
It's really a nice. In fact, there's people that I'm like, who's that? Oh,
didn't know about that person.
She was a paleontologist. I didn't know about her, kind of thing. And I think that's all my fun notes. All I have on Curium is it's on the Mars rover. That's all I got.
Oh, is it? I did not get that.
Yes, there is a piece of it that I don't know. There is something.
It provides power to electrical equipment in space missions.
So Mars rover.
That's probably why. Yep.
So Curium, they didn't say whether or not it was named after her or her husband or both. No one's been very clear.
It's 1944 was founded in 1944 by Glenn Seaborg and his colleagues. And his colleagues were Ralph James and Albert Ghiorso. They were using the cyclotron at Berkeley, California.
Berkeley is a huge point of discovering.
There's an element named after Berkeley. Or there's californium.
There's berkelium and there's californium.
Mm-hmm.
We're basically going to have an episode called Berkeley. They invented all of these.
Everything. Well, because they hit the newly discovered plutonium with alpha particles, and then they sent that to the metallurgical laboratory at the University of Chicago, where the sample of curium was eventually separated and identified. But this is really fun. So, and it was in honor of both Marie and Pierre.
Okay.
The silver radioactive metal. And the news of the discovery was not let out until after World War II, which kind of makes sense because, all the craziness going on. Don't want to give anybody any ideas. But Seaborg announced it when he appeared as a guest scientist on a radio show for children. on the 11th of November, 1945. And then officially it was announced the next week. So it was like, we'll just let that out. You kids, I found a new thing. So I thought that was funny. And what's interesting is that, so I think that little, so we're talking about the periodic table, there's the big table, and then there's this little section that's pulled out and put below the table.
Yeah.
And those are all the ones that are basically not natural, that we created in a laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they put them in order of when they discover them. But this one is the third synthetically produced since uranium, the transuranium element was discovered, but it's the second one after americonium on the table. So like I think americium, I don't know. I can't say it. It's America with an eum at the end.
Americurium.
Americium. There we go. Americium.
America.
America. Yeah. So you have americium, which is right after plutonium. So not all of those are ones that we've created, right? Those plutoniums are an actual element.
Right.
But after that, all these ones with the higher atomic numbers are ones we created. So it goes americurium, then curium, and then berkelium. But it was the third invented, not the second invented. But it's not that way on the periodic table. So I'm not really sure why that is, but it is.
Will you get into like people in a lab trying to just push another?
Let's just bombard this with a whole bunch of things and see what happens. And sometimes these half-lives of these things are like a millisecond. Like barely like those ones I'm like, really, is that really a thing? I think it has to be stable for a little while for you to be able to
Apparently not.
So yes, its use provides power to electrical equipment and space missions. The isotope CM242 generates 3 watts of thermal energy per gram, which is more than plutonium produces. So again, a little bit stronger. And CM242 and 244 have been used as power sources for space and medical practices. So it does have a fair amount of goodness there, but not good in your body. Again, alpha decay. It accumulates in bones and destroys the red blood cell formation, because that's where red blood cells are formed in your bone.
Is this with by theory, or did they actually has someone actually been poisoned by this?
I don't know. I assume that they actually know that it does this, but I don't know. They did not say.
I kind of hoped that it wasn't, though, because that poor guy is like, ah, man.
Yeah, but they're also making this stuff up in these labs, so I don't know.
Are you saying you get what you get?
Well, you are working around radioactive stuff, so you gotta
know the risks.
Taking the risks, right? I'm not saying they deserve it. I'm just saying there's risks.
Right.
So minute amounts may exist in natural deposits of uranium, but there's no evidence that they exist today. But they may have in the past. So what's really interesting, the most stable isotope of curium, which is curium-247, has a half-life, wait for it, of 16 million years. So, if curium was around in primordial times, it would have disappeared millions of years ago, even with a 16 million year old half-life.
That's a long half-life. I wish my half-life was that long.
Right? So it may have existed a while ago, not so much now.
Oh, man.
Okay, so again, you make it by taking plutonium and throwing neutrons at it in a nuclear reactor and creating it. But only a few grams are produced each year for obvious reasons. And I didn't get too much into this, but it exists as 2 crystal structures. There's a double hexagonal close pact and a high temperature face-centered cubic close pact.
No idea what that meant, but that sounded cool.
There was another sentence or two, and I'm like, I can't wrap my brain around it. I'm just gonna go with that. That's cool. Comes in.
Do you get crystals. A sound in your head that's like, warning, warning, you won't understand? Shutting down.
Too much. I didn't even get to the end of the sentence, and I'm like, I'm lost. I don't know. I don't understand. Okay. But it's cool.
It's cool.
Mm-hmm. So that's all we got about curium, because we've made it.
There's not much. Yeah, no. We've made all that. Which is why we threw it on there. I mean, it is connected to her in a way.
Well,
so we wanted to have... Right.
Yeah.
So,
and it makes sense because it's super radioactive.
Radioactive.
Well, that's the thing. So radioactivity is because it's unstable. That's why it emits particles to become more stable. So you already have an unstable plutonium, and then you're throwing more neutrons at it, trying to make it more something it's not. So, like, what do you expect? Of course it's going to be more radioactive. It doesn't want to be that way. You're forcing it on them.
I always find it really interesting that there's so many science fiction and superhero comics and things that are about radioactivity. And it's not usually like plutonium, not plutonium. It usually is plutonium. It's not usually like radium or polonium or curium, but
yeah, I mean, you think uranium and thorium. That's what you think about when you think radioactivity.
I think plutonium for some reason.
And
My brain goes to like when I think of like radioactive materials, I'm like plutonium or uranium is definitely one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is very popular in culture, but like not the ones we talked about today. They're not usually the ones used, although you do hear the word gamma rays a lot.
Well, that's why it's like sci-fi stuff. Like, the gamma radiation, because it's not good for you.
No. However, it will not give me spider powers.
No. Or make you into the Hulk.
I'd rather have spider powers.
Yeah, me too.
Just,
big and green versus climbing walls. Yeah.
Only having powers when I'm really pissed off.
You won't like me when I'm angry.
I'm angry. Although She-Hulk was a lawyer, so whatever.
Well, that kind of makes sense, right? Lawyers. Angry. Just saying.
Except she was like always green. I delved a little bit into that world, and then I was like,
a little weird.
Yeah. Anyways, so
cool.
I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Cindy, where can they find you?
You can visit my other alter ego, my marine mammal research at www.pacmam.org, and we're on Instagram and Facebook, and we have a podcast as well if you like marine mammals.
Yes.
Listen to that, and we're also on YouTube. They have videos of some of our podcasts on there as well.
So fun. That's awesome.
We enjoy. And where they can find you?
They can find me on Instagram at GracieRuns50by50. That's 50x50. Where I rarely post things, but and where my whole run in 50 half marathons in 50 states by the time I'm 50 is kind of screeched to a halt. I said halt, a halt, because pandemic. So, Cindy and I are doing some virtual races coming up, which is, fun.
It's better. They're better than nothing, but not the same.
No, it's not. In fact, right now we are working on, we are virtually running around
Florida.
Because
you don't want to go to Florida right now.
Oh, God, no.
Nope.
I had a coworker that went there. I was like, why? It's like the worst place you could go, but oh well. Yeah. So we're virtually running around Florida to save the floaty potatoes, AKA also known as manatees, because we love manatees.
They're adorable.
They are.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And that GIF where that one runs into the glass wall just cracks me up. Or GIF, whatever you call it.
The GIF.
I call it GIF.
I think it is GIF.
Yeah, I think so. But anyways, there's one where a manatee's like, you hear him like, no. He just like smooshes his nose against the glass. He like bounces off.
Poor manatee.
Oh, they're dumb, but they're cute.
Floaty potatoes.
They are floaty potatoes. Well, make sure to subscribe to our podcast so that when we randomly decide to download after 4 months, you can go, aha! So you won't have to just keep checking. It'll download right to your phone. You can find us at Spotify, and you can find us on Apple, anywhere else you get your podcasts. Make sure to like us. Leave a review. I think we said we'd give a gift to the first person who reviews us. We have yet to give anyone a gift. So
get on it.
I will give myself a gift and leave a review.
They're great.
Yeah, these girls are hilarious.
So funny.
But yeah, feel free to tell people about it. That's how we get the word out about science. If we actually have more people showing interest, we will be more consistent. I think it's the fact that only one of my coworkers listens to us that I even.
There's a few people.
There's a few.
Yeah.
And not just my dad or my aunt.
I have a friend too that listens. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got like 6 listeners. A solid 6.
Done.
Help
us get more people. Help us get more.
Yeah, we will gladly. I mean, if I'm an easily motivated person. You got to just motivate me. You got to be like, hey, Grace, you know, I really want to hear the next podcast, and then I'll actually be like, oh, people are counting on me. But if it's just Cindy being like, you want a podcast? I'm like,
like it's been a while. We probably do one,
or we'll do 7 in a weekend, whatever,
right.
and then forget to load them.
That's my bad.
No, I can't leave it all to you, poor Cindy. I'm like, hey, can you do all the recordings and editings and posting? Thanks, bye.
No problem. Bye.
Then I'm like, I don't have time to research. It's too much work. As I'm stuck at home.
I've got places to go and people to not see. Okay, no,
I have nowhere to go and people to stay far away from. Social distance.
Need some time away from these people that are in my house all the time.
Oh, don't even get me started on that. All right, we're gonna.
We should let them go.
Yes, we should. We've been talking for far too long. So once again, my name is Grace.
My name is Cindy.
Stay away from radioactive material, people.
Don't go to the Radium Springs.
Yeah, and you'll hear from us later.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.
Boop, boop, loop. Okay, it is now recording. Testing.
Is it on? Oh, look at that baby.
Baby. Whoa. Almost got headbutted by a baby.
I can't get enough of that baby.